The chamber of the Galactic Council was larger than any human building. It was built with metal walls that shimmered with strange colors, and the ceiling rose so high that the top was lost in shadows. Hundreds of beings from different planets filled the seats. Some had scales, others had wings, and some were nothing but glowing energy. All of them spoke in their own voices, but the chamber turned it into one sound that everyone could understand. For many years, Earth had been a small voice in this chamber. No one respected it. They saw humans as young, short-lived, and unimportant. Humans did not have fleets that stretched across the stars. They did not have weapons that could shatter moons. To the Council, Earth was only a small planet that made noise but had little power. In the corner of the chamber, a tall being with silver skin laughed as he spoke. He said that humans were amusing, like children who thought they were strong but were not. Many other counselors joined him in laughter. They remembered how Earth had tried to argue against unfair trade taxes. They remembered how humans demanded to be treated as equals, and they found it funny. To them, humans were ants standing before giants. But not everyone laughed. A few council members looked uneasy. One of them, a reptilian female with sharp eyes, spoke softly. She said that humans were not like other young species. They were stubborn. They adapted quickly. She reminded them of a battle long ago, when a small human fleet resisted for days against impossible odds. She said that humans always found a way to rise again even when crushed. Still, the laughter continued. The Council did not believe that Earth could ever threaten them. They decided to pass new orders that would soon strike against the small blue planet. Far away on Earth itself, the night sky was filled with stars. Captain Ethan Ward stood on the balcony of a hidden base in the mountains. The air was cold, and the ground below was covered with snow. He looked up at the stars, knowing that the Council was watching his planet and preparing to tighten its grip. Ethan was a soldier, but he was also a man who loved his world. He knew Earth was not weak, not truly. He had seen what humans could do when pressed against the wall. Inside the base, lights glowed across screens and tables. Scientists and engineers worked day and night. Among them was Dr. Claire Morgan, a woman with bright eyes and a mind that never stopped turning. She had studied alien technology for years, always searching for answers. Claire believed that if Earth was to survive, it needed more than courage. It needed new power. Claire walked to Ethan and handed him a tablet. It showed designs for something called Project Dawn. She explained that it was more than a single weapon. It was a hidden plan that joined many ideas. Stealth ships that could not be tracked, energy weapons that pierced shields, and new shields that could bend around cities. It was not perfect yet, but it was a beginning. She said the Council thought humans were weak, but soon they would learn the truth. Ethan listened carefully. He respected Claire, not only for her knowledge, but for her belief in their people. He asked if Project Dawn could be finished in time, before the Council acted. Claire did not answer quickly. She looked at the screens, at the tired faces of the engineers, and then back at Ethan. She said it depended on how much humans were willing to sacrifice. In the cities of Earth, life went on. People walked to work, children played, and families gathered in homes. They did not know the full danger that was coming. But whispers began to spread, rumors that the Council wanted to strip Earth of resources, to make it nothing but a servant world. Fear moved through the streets, but so did anger. Humans had always fought for their freedom, from ancient wars to modern struggles. Now they faced the greatest test of all. Ethan walked through the base, speaking with pilots, soldiers, and builders. He told them that they were not only defending their land, but their future. He said the Council would not see them as weak children anymore. They would see them as equals. Some of the younger soldiers looked nervous, but others stood tall, ready to fight for their families. Claire spent long nights working on the energy designs. Her hands shook from exhaustion, but she refused to stop. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the image of Earth burning, crushed under alien fleets. She could not allow it. She thought of her parents who still lived in a small town, of her friends who had no idea what dangers circled above them. She thought of the billions of people who depended on her work. And so she continued. In space, above Earth, old satellites watched silently. They picked up strange movements among the stars. Signals were sent back to the hidden base. Ethan studied them and knew the Council was preparing to act. The time was shorter than they had hoped. Project Dawn had to move faster. Claire gathered her team and told them the truth. There was no more time for slow progress. They needed to take risks. She asked each one of them if they were willing to push beyond safety. She said the future of Earth rested on their shoulders. One by one, they all agreed. Fear showed in their eyes, but also determination. They knew history was being written in that moment. Far across the galaxy, the Council continued its debates. Some members called for patience, but most wanted action. They believed Earth could not resist. They prepared a decree that would demand Earth surrender its resources and accept complete control. It was to be signed and sent within days. They expected no fight, only obedience. Back on Earth, Ethan stood again on the balcony, the snow falling around him. Claire joined him, carrying a mug of coffee in her hand. They did not speak for a while, just looked at the sky. Ethan finally said that war was coming, whether they wanted it or not. Claire nodded and said that sometimes war was forced on those who wanted only peace. But she added that when humans were pushed, they always found a way to strike back. The night grew colder and the stars seemed sharper. Ethan thought of the people sleeping in their homes, unaware of what was about to unfold. He swore to himself that he would protect them no matter the cost. Claire touched his arm gently, reminding him that he was not alone. They had each other, and they had all of humanity standing with them. In the shadows of the mountain base, Project Dawn grew closer to completion. Ships were being built in secret hangars. New weapons were tested deep underground. Signals were sent quietly to hidden allies who believed in Earth's cause. Little by little, a plan was taking shape. Above them, the stars continued to burn. And far away in the grand chamber of the Council, voices rose again, mocking Earth and its people. They did not yet know what was coming. They did not yet understand the fire that burned in human hearts. Soon they would. The decree from the Galactic Council reached Earth like a storm carried by light. It arrived not through ships but through signals. Words pressed into every channel that humans used. The message was clear and cruel. Earth was ordered to give up half its resources to the Council. Food, metals, energy, water, all of it was to be taken and shipped to distant planets. If Earth refused, the Council warned, a fleet would come to enforce the order. People across Earth heard the words in shock. In cities, crowds gathered around screens, listening to the alien voices that spoke with no respect. Some cursed, some wept, and some stood frozen, unable to believe what they had heard. For many, fear was the first reaction. The Council's power was greater than anything humans had ever faced. Their fleets filled the stars, and their weapons could destroy continents. What could Earth do against such force? But fear soon turned to anger. In the streets of New York, London, Tokyo, and countless other cities, voices rose. People shouted that they would never allow themselves to be slaves. They shouted that Earth was their home and no one had the right to strip it bare. Across the oceans, across borders, people who often disagreed now found themselves united. They were not just citizens of nations anymore. They were humans standing together. In the mountain base, Captain Ethan Ward listened to the decree with a hard face. Beside him, Dr. Claire Morgan clenched her fists. She said the Council had crossed a line. They had not just insulted Earth, they had threatened its very life. Ethan nodded and said this was the moment they had prepared for. Project Dawn was no longer a secret plan. It was Earth's only hope. Claire opened the files on the main screen. Designs of sleek ships appeared, each shaped to slip unseen through enemy sensors. Weapons glowed in blue diagrams, showing beams of energy sharper than anything humans had ever built. Defense grids stretched across maps of cities. Claire explained that they were still unfinished, still untested. But if they waited for perfection, it would be too late. The room grew tense as Ethan called his team together. Jason Clark, a skilled pilot with steady hands, leaned forward in his chair. Lily Sanders, the engineer whose mind worked faster than machines, tapped her pen against the table, already thinking of new adjustments. Soldiers, technicians, and leaders stood in silence as Ethan spoke. He told them that Earth could not bow. He told them that the Council thought of them as weak, as children. But children grow. He said they had a choice: submit and lose everything, or rise and fight for the right to exist. His voice was calm, but his eyes burned. He said the Council believed fear would control them, but fear would be the fire that gave them strength. In another part of the world, leaders of nations met in secret calls. Some wanted to surrender, hoping to save lives by obeying. Others shouted that surrender was nothing but slow death. Claire joined one of these meetings through a secure channel. She told them that Earth had weapons the Council did not expect. She told them Project Dawn could give humanity a chance, but she warned them. Victory would not come without risk. Lives would be lost. Cities might burn. Still, she said, the future was worth the cost. The debate raged, but finally, more voices leaned toward resistance. For the first time in history, nations agreed to unite under one banner for survival. The United Defense of Earth was born, not as a dream, but as a necessity. News spread quickly. Pilots volunteered in huge numbers. Engineers worked without rest. Families gathered supplies, helping however they could. In the countryside, farmers gave food freely to soldiers. In the cities, people donated machines, metals, and fuel. The spirit of humanity lit like a flame across the planet. Above Earth, satellites caught new signals. The Council was moving a fleet closer. Not a full armada, but enough to frighten and control. Their ships glowed like silver specks in the darkness, approaching with arrogant speed. They believed Earth would surrender the moment they arrived. Ethan watched the signals on the screen. His jaw tightened as he realized the Council meant to humiliate them before the galaxy. He turned to Jason and told him to prepare the first squadron of stealth ships. Jason grinned, though his eyes showed the weight of the moment. He said he had been waiting his whole life to fly something that mattered. Lily brought new designs to Claire, showing how she could reinforce the shields on the stealth ships. Claire studied the designs and nodded, knowing they had little time. Together they worked through the night, their fingers racing across keyboards, their minds locked on survival. Every spark of progress felt like a spark of hope. Days later, the fleet arrived. Fast ships hovered in orbit, blotting out the stars. They sent another message, this time colder than before. Surrender now or be crushed. They expected silence or begging. Instead, the Council fleet received no answer. The humans were waiting. On the surface, people looked up at the sky with fear. Some held their children close, whispering promises of safety. Others clenched their fists, angry at the invaders above. Ethan stood before his soldiers, his voice steady. He said that history was watching. He said that today was the day humans proved themselves. He told them to remember their families, their homes, their planet. He told them to fight not for revenge, but for survival. Jason led the first squadron into space. The stealth ships glided silently, hidden from the Council's sensors. They were small compared to the massive alien ships like shadows against mountains, but they carried weapons that burned hotter than the Council had ever seen. In the Council's command ship, alien officers scanned the void, puzzled by strange readings. Before they could react, beams of light pierced their shields, cutting through their armor. Explosions lit the dark like suns. Ships twisted and broke apart, their pieces falling into the void. The Council fleet staggered in shock. They had expected no fight, only surrender. On Earth, people watching from hidden bases cheered as reports came in. Claire's eyes filled with tears as she realized the weapons worked. Ethan allowed himself a small smile, but he reminded everyone this was only the beginning. The Council would not forgive such defiance. They would return with more. In the Galactic Council chamber far away, the news arrived. Voices rose in chaos, disbelief echoing across the hall. How could humans, a species they mocked as weak, strike down their fleet? Some shouted for revenge, others for caution. The silver-skinned counselor who once laughed now trembled with rage. The reptilian female who had warned of human stubbornness spoke again. She said the galaxy had been blind. The humans had woken and they would not bow. On Earth, Ethan returned to the balcony of the mountain base. He looked at the stars, knowing war was now certain. Claire joined him, her eyes tired but burning with determination. She said they had lit the first spark, but the fire would grow. Ethan nodded and said the Council had wanted obedience, but instead, they had created resistance. And resistance once born could not be killed so easily. Below them, the world prepared. Factories worked through nights. Students joined training camps. Scientists tore apart old machines to build new ones. The planet that the Council thought was weak was now alive with unity and defiance. Far above, the broken remains of the Council fleet drifted in silence, a warning written in fire. The galaxy was watching, and for the first time it whispered not of Earth's weakness but of its strength. The fleet of the Galactic Council floated above Earth, damaged and broken. Many ships were nothing but burning shells drifting in the darkness. Others limped away, their engines weak, their weapons silent. Humans had done the impossible. They had struck the Council with power that no one believed they had. The news spread across the galaxy like a storm. Worlds whispered in shock, asking how Earth, a planet mocked as weak, could do such a thing. Inside the Council chamber, voices rose like thunder. Counselors shouted at one another, their pride wounded. Some demanded that Earth be destroyed completely, a warning to every other world. Others spoke with caution, saying humans had shown strength that could not be ignored. But anger was louder than reason. The Council ordered a full retaliation. Fleets from many worlds would unite. They believed no human trick could save Earth from what was coming. On Earth, Captain Ethan Ward stood with his team in the mountain base. Screens showed the aftermath of their first victory. The people of Earth cheered in the streets, their fear turning into pride. Yet Ethan did not smile for long. He knew what was coming next. The council would return, and when they did, they would not underestimate humanity again. Daughter Claire Morgan worked with her engineers, her mind racing. She told Ethan that their success had bought them time, but only a little. She showed him new calculations. The council's full fleet could crush Earth in days once it arrived. Project Dawn had to grow faster. They needed more ships, more weapons, and stronger defenses. Ethan agreed, though he knew it would push their people to the edge. Pilots trained day and night. Jason Clark led them, his voice sharp but steady. He taught them how to fly the stealth ships with precision, how to strike quickly and disappear before the enemy could react. He pushed them hard, reminding them that the sky above their families depended on every skill they learned. Many of the pilots were young, some barely out of school, but their eyes were set with determination. They knew the risk, yet they flew anyway. In the labs, Lily Sanders worked on shields. Her fingers were stained with grease and burns from failed tests, but she kept going. She believed that if she could make the new energy shields stronger, entire cities could survive even the heaviest bombardments. One night, after hours of silence, she shouted with joy. Her design finally held against a full test blast. It was not perfect, but it was enough to give hope. In the cities, people built shelters underground. Families painted symbols of Earth on their walls, a sign of unity. Children asked questions about the ships in the sky, and parents told them not to be afraid. They said humans were strong, that their soldiers and scientists would protect them. Even in fear, hope lived in the hearts of ordinary people. Then the council fleet arrived. Thousands of ships darkened the stars, stretching farther than human eyes could see. Their weapons glowed with deadly light. Their commanders sent one final demand: surrender or die. But once again, no reply came from Earth. Ethan stood before his soldiers. He told them the moment had come. They were not just defending land or cities. They were defending every dream of freedom, every future of their children. He said the council thought they could break humanity with fear, but humanity would answer with fire. His voice carried across the base, across every channel, reaching soldiers and citizens alike. People listened, their hearts steadying, their courage growing. When the council fleet moved closer, Ethan gave the order. Project Dawn launched in full. Stealth ships rose from hidden hangars, their engines quiet as shadows. They moved into space, disappearing from enemy sensors. Jason led the first wave, his voice calm in the comms. He told his squadron to remember why they fought. Then they struck. Beams of light tore through the dark. Alien ships burst into flames, their shields useless against human weapons. Explosions rippled across the fleet, shaking their formation. The council commanders shouted in shock, unable to understand how humans could strike so hard. They tried to respond, firing volleys of energy, but the stealth ships were gone before the blasts arrived. Claire watched from the base, her hands tight on the console. She guided the fleet, sending new orders, adjusting formations. Her voice kept the soldiers steady, her mind racing ahead of the battle. She spoke calmly, though her heart pounded. She knew one mistake could cost thousands of lives. In orbit, Jason flew through fire. Enemy ships swarmed, trying to trap him. He spun his ship between blasts, his hands steady, his eyes sharp. He fired again, breaking another enemy cruiser apart. His squadron followed, striking and vanishing, striking and vanishing. They fought not as a large army, but as a storm of shadows tearing holes in the enemy's pride. On the ground, Lily activated the new shields. Energy domes rose over key cities, glowing faintly like blue glass. When enemy weapons rained down, the shields held. Blasts that should have destroyed entire streets vanished against her design. People in the cities cheered, their hope rising as they saw they were not helpless. But the council had numbers beyond counting. Wave after wave of ships poured into the battle. For every one destroyed, more appeared. Human pilots grew tired, their ships strained under endless fire. Ethan saw the numbers and knew they could not fight forever. He called for a retreat into new positions, saving his fleets for another strike. As the battle raged, Claire discovered something strange in the council's transmissions. Hidden within their signals was a weakness, a flaw in how their ships communicated. She realized humans could use it, jamming their orders and turning their numbers into confusion. She rushed to tell Ethan, her voice shaking with excitement. Ethan gave the order immediately. Soon, the council fleet stumbled. Their commands failed to reach half their ships. Formations broke apart. Collisions erupted as ships lost coordination. Human stealth fleets struck again, hitting weak points with precision. What seemed like an endless tide began to falter. On Earth, people watching the skies saw flashes of victory. They shouted in joy, their voices carrying through streets and homes. They knew their soldiers were still fighting, still standing. In the council chamber across the stars, silence fell. Reports showed their mighty fleet stumbling before a planet they thought was powerless. Pride turned to disbelief. Disbelief turned to fear. Some counselors demanded even greater force, but others whispered that humans were no longer a simple enemy. They were something new, something the galaxy had not seen before. On the battlefield above Earth, the council finally began to pull back. Their commanders feared losing more ships to the human storm. Ethan watched their retreat on the screens. He let out a long breath, knowing it was only a pause. They would return stronger and angrier. But for now, humanity had survived again. Claire leaned against her console, exhausted but smiling faintly. Lily collapsed in a chair, whispering that the shields had worked. Jason returned to the base, his ship scarred but intact. He saluted Ethan, his face tired but proud. They had done the impossible twice, but they all knew the hardest days were still ahead. Ethan stood on the balcony once more, the stars above scarred with the light of battle. He thought of the council, of the anger boiling in their chamber. He thought of his people, who now looked to him with hope. He swore to himself that Earth would never kneel no matter how many fleets came. As Claire joined him, the cold night wind carried her words. She said the galaxy was watching, and it would never see Earth the same way again. The days after the second battle were filled with both pride and fear. Across Earth, people celebrated that they had survived once again. Songs were sung in the streets, flags were raised on rooftops, and children painted stars with the word hope on walls. But beneath the joy, everyone knew the truth. The Galactic Council had not been defeated forever. They had only been slowed. Soon, a greater storm would arrive. Captain Ethan Ward gathered his team in the mountain base. The large screen showed reports from spies and satellites. The Council was building a massive force, gathering fleets from dozens of worlds. The numbers were unlike anything humanity had faced before. Claire Morgan studied the reports, her face tense. She said that this would not be a single battle, but a war that could last until either Earth or the Council was broken. Lily Sanders whispered that their shields might not hold if so many fleets attacked at once. Jason Clark clenched his fists, ready to fly again, but even he admitted they needed something more than courage. Ethan stood before them, silent for a long time. Then he said they would not wait for the Council to come with all their power. Instead, they would strike first, hitting their supply lines, their fuel stations, their communication hubs. They could not win by strength alone, but they could win by making the Council bleed slowly, piece by piece. Claire agreed, saying that humans had always used cleverness to survive against stronger foes. Teams were sent into space. Small groups of stealth ships traveled far from Earth, moving like shadows through the dark. They attacked lonely supply convoys, leaving Council fleets stranded without fuel. They jammed communication beacons, causing confusion in the enemy ranks. Jason led one raid after another, his squadron striking quick and vanishing before the Council could react. Stories of these raids spread across the galaxy, and soon the name human carried both fear and respect. On Earth, Lily worked to improve her shield designs. She tested stronger cores, bending energy in new ways. At times, the shields collapsed in violent explosions, shaking the underground labs. Still, she refused to stop. She told Claire that if even one city fell because her work was not enough, she could never forgive herself. One evening, after endless trials, she finally created a design that covered entire cities with a dome of glowing strength. It was larger and steadier than anything before. Claire hugged her tightly, telling her she had given humanity more time. In the cities, people did not sit idle. They built underground tunnels, stocked food, and trained as militias. Farmers learned to handle weapons. Teachers drilled their students in emergency plans. Families painted their homes with the symbol of Earth, a blue circle surrounded by stars, a mark of unity. No one wanted war, but no one planned to bow. The Galactic Council watched these events with growing anger. Their fleets had been embarrassed twice, and now their supply lines were under attack. In their grand chamber, silver-skinned and winged beings shouted over one another. Some demanded to destroy Earth with the full power of their armadas. Others feared what the humans might reveal if pressed further. Still, pride burned stronger than doubt. The order was given. Earth must fall. Every fleet that could be spared was sent to gather for one final strike. When word of this massive fleet reached Earth, silence filled the mountain base. The screens showed numbers too large to count. Claire whispered that it was as if the whole galaxy was turning against them. Ethan looked around at his people and saw fear, but also determination. He told them that numbers did not decide every war. He reminded them of Earth's long history, of battles won by wit, by will, and by unity. He said that this was not just a fight for survival, but a fight to prove that humanity had the right to exist as equals in the galaxy. Jason prepared his pilots for the hardest missions yet. He told them that they would strike deep into enemy lines, breaking their order before they could reach Earth. He knew some might never return, but he did not hide the truth. His pilots nodded, their eyes steady. They said they would do whatever it took. They wanted their families to live free. Lily presented her new shield system to the world. Massive generators were installed around major cities. People watched as glowing domes of blue light rose into the sky, covering homes and towers. Cheers erupted, and for the first time children laughed without fear. Claire called it humanity's wall against the storm. She knew the shields might still break under endless fire, but she also knew they gave people hope. The days before the invasion were filled with preparation. Factories produced weapons without pause. Shipyards in orbit built more stealth craft. Scientists shared ideas across nations without hiding secrets. For once, humanity was not divided by borders. The world was one. Then the Council came. Their fleet stretched across the stars, a sea of light and steel. Never before had Earth seen such power aimed at them. People in the cities watched with wide eyes, knowing the battle of their lives had arrived. But instead of fear, songs rose in the streets. Drums beat. Voices shouted the same words again and again. Earth will not bow. In the command room, Ethan gave his orders. Stealth squadrons would strike at the edges of the fleet. Ground defenses would shield the cities. Lily's domes would hold as long as possible. Claire would direct the flow of the battle, searching for weaknesses. Every part of humanity, every mind, every hand was part of the plan. When the first enemy shots rained down, the shields glowed and held. Explosions lit the skies, but the cities beneath stood safe. Jason led his squadron into the void, weaving between giants, hitting their engines, their fuel, their weapons. Explosions followed in his path, but so did heavy fire. One by one, human pilots fell, their ships burning in silence. Yet the others pressed on, striking harder, flying faster. Claire's eyes raced across the screens. She found gaps, sent orders, and kept the fleets moving like water around stone. Her calm voice kept panic away, though inside she feared every second. Ethan stood beside her, silent but steady, his presence a reminder that they were not alone. On the ground, Lily watched as her shields bent under heavy fire. Sparks leapt from the generators, warning lights flashing. She pressed her hands against the controls, whispering to herself to hold just a little longer. And the shields did. Blasts that should have leveled. Cities broke and scattered, the people beneath still safe. The Council commanders grew frustrated. They had expected quick victory, but the humans resisted with every breath. The fleets they mocked as shadows struck with deadly force. The shields they thought impossible glowed stronger than ever. Confusion spread, and with confusion came fear. Night passed into day, and the battle raged without end. Both sides suffered, both sides bled. But Earth stood. Every hour bought was another victory. Every life saved was another reason to fight. And as dawn broke on the second day of war, the people of Earth looked to the sky and saw the fleet still there. But they also saw their own ships still flying. Hope did not die. It grew. In the council chamber across the galaxy, messengers brought news that shocked them. Humanity had not fallen. Their fleets were not broken. Their cities still stood. The counselors who once laughed now shouted in anger and fear. They had unleashed their might, yet the humans still lived. Whispers filled the chamber that maybe Earth could not be destroyed so easily, that maybe this small blue planet was something far greater than they believed. Back on Earth, Ethan stood once more on the balcony of the mountain base. The sky above him burned with trails of fire, but the world beneath was still alive. Claire joined him, her eyes tired but shining. Lily and Jason stood nearby, their bodies worn but unbroken. Together they looked at the horizon, knowing the war was far from over. But they also knew one truth that no battle could erase. Earth had faced the full fury of the galaxy, and Earth still stood. The Council had gathered their fleets for one final strike. It was larger than any force Earth had seen. A mass of ships that stretched across the stars. Their weapons glowed with deadly energy. They believed that humanity could not survive another assault. Yet on Earth, the people were ready. For months they had prepared, building ships, shields, and training pilots and soldiers. Every hand, every mind, every heart worked for the defense of their planet. Captain Ethan Ward stood with Dr. Claire Morgan, Jason Clark, and Lily Sanders in the mountain base. Screens showed the enemy fleet, a sea of light and steel moving slowly but surely toward Earth. Ethan said that this was the moment to show the galaxy that humans were not weak. He reminded everyone that fear was natural, But courage and unity could turn the tide of any war. Claire nodded, knowing that the plans they had worked on for months were ready for action. The first wave of council ships entered orbit, their weapons raised. Pilots flew the stealth ships out of hidden hangars. Jason led them, his voice steady as he gave commands. They moved quickly, hitting weak points in the enemy's formation. Explosions lit the darkness, sending council ships tumbling into space. Humans did not seek total destruction. They wanted to show power and protect their planet, not kill needlessly. Still, the message was clear. Earth would not bow. On the ground, Lily activated the largest shields ever built. Cities across the world glowed with protective domes. Energy pulses ran through the grids, reinforcing buildings, roads, and power stations. Families huddled inside, watching as their planet came under attack. Yet fear was mixed with awe. They knew humanity had never faced a threat like this before, yet they were alive, safe, and united. The battle stretched into hours. Jason and his squadron weaved through enemy fire, striking supply lines and command ships. Some pilots were lost, their ships burning as they fell. Each loss was mourned, but their sacrifice inspired the others. Ethan coordinated the defense from the base, sending orders, monitoring shields, and keeping morale high. Claire worked tirelessly, analyzing enemy patterns, finding flaws, and guiding the human forces with her intelligence. As the fight continued, strange reports reached Ethan. Some council ships were failing from internal breakdowns, while others seemed confused by human tactics. Claire realized that Earth's unique biology allowed their soldiers to survive extreme conditions that alien species could not endure. Humans could withstand pressure, radiation, and rapid acceleration in ways the Council did not expect. She quickly relayed this to Ethan, who understood the opportunity. The human forces shifted tactics. They used the Council's underestimation against them, pushing forward in small groups to create chaos, then retreating before the enemy could respond. Jason led daring raids, his squadron striking multiple targets in a single pass. Explosions and fire spread through the enemy fleet, each strike causing confusion and fear. Humanity's unity became their greatest weapon. On Earth, people cheered for every success. Children watched from windows as the night sky glowed with battle, and they learned courage from their parents and neighbors. Farmers, builders, teachers all contributed. The planet itself seemed alive with determination. For the first time, humans were not just defending cities. They were defending the idea of freedom and life itself. Inside the council chamber, panic replaced arrogance. Leaders shouted at one another, their orders ignored or misunderstood. Fleets collided, weapons misfired, and communication broke down. The galaxy watched in awe and fear as reports showed that Earth had survived every assault, striking back with intelligence and force. The Council had underestimated humans for too long. Ethan and his team seized the moment. They launched a final coordinated strike, targeting the heart of the Council fleet. Human ships moved like shadows, unseen and precise. Jason's squadron hit the command center, while other ships disabled the main weapons. Explosions tore through the enemy fleet, leaving destruction in their wake. The Council's pride was shattered, their power faltering. Lily's shields absorbed the remaining attacks on Earth, bending the energy harmlessly around cities. People outside watched in disbelief as the glowing domes held against blasts that should have leveled entire towns. Claire directed the defense, calculating every move, guiding pilots and ground forces alike. She whispered that humanity had reached the point no one thought possible. Victory was within reach. The final moments were tense. The Council fleet was still vast but disorganized. Human forces pressed forward, striking relentlessly. Jason led a risky maneuver, disabling the remaining command ships. Without leadership, the Council fleet scattered, retreating in confusion and fear. Humanity had survived, and in doing so, they had shown the galaxy their strength. After the battle, silence fell across the stars. The Council had never expected resistance like this. Their arrogance had been their downfall. Worlds that had looked down on humans now whispered of their courage and intelligence. The galaxy had learned that humans could not be controlled or underestimated. On Earth, people poured into the streets celebrating their survival. Soldiers returned from space, exhausted but alive. Families embraced. Children laughed freely. Ethan, Claire, Jason, and Lily stood together on the balcony of the mountain base looking at the stars. The fires of battle were fading, but the memory of courage and unity burned bright. Ethan spoke softly, saying that humans had proven themselves not by hate or revenge, but by defending their home and people. Claire added that Earth had earned a place in the galaxy that no council could ignore. Jason grinned, proud of his squadron and their daring. Lily smiled, knowing that her work had saved millions. Far away, the Galactic Council met in silence. The reports of their fleet's failure stunned them. Whispers filled the chamber, questioning leadership, strategy, and pride. They realized that humans were not just another species. They were resilient, clever, and united. Earth had struck back, and the Council would never forget it. As night fell over Earth, the world breathed freely for the first time in months. Humans had survived impossible odds. Cities, farms, mountains, and oceans were intact. And above them, stars shone with a quiet brilliance, as if acknowledging that humanity had risen, not just to defend itself, but to claim respect across the galaxy. Ethan, Claire, Jason, and Lily looked at the sky and smiled, knowing that the story of Earth's courage had just begun, and the galaxy would never see humans the same way again.